Beneath the calm surface of our oceans lie forgotten metropolises. We are about to explore 20 submerged cities discovered on the ocean floor, and by the end, you will see human history in an entirely new light. These are not legends, but real streets and temples preserved in the deep, each holding secrets about why great civilizations fall. How does a bustling port vanish into the sea? And what can its silent stones tell us about our own future on a changing planet? We will uncover cities claimed by earthquakes, swallowed by rising tides, and even one deliberately flooded to power the modern world. What do you believe is the most important lesson a lost city can teach us? Our story begins not with a city, but with the immense forces that claimed them. Earth is not a static stage for human history, it is an active participant. The ground we build upon can move, and the waters we sail can rise. To truly grasp the silent cities we will explore, we must first listen to the planet's own story of change. This is the phenomenon of submergence, a slow dance between geology and climate that has reshaped coastlines for millennia. The primary mover is tectonic activity. The massive plates that make up Earth's crust are in constant, grinding motion. Along certain fault lines, this movement can be catastrophic, causing the land itself to drop during a powerful earthquake in a process called subsidence. A city built on such unstable ground can vanish into the sea in a single, terrible day, but the shift is not always sudden. In some regions, the land sinks gradually over centuries, an imperceptible retreat that generations might not even notice until the sea finally claims the streets. Working in concert with this shifting crust is the relentless power of water. Around 12,000 years ago, the last great ice age ended. As vast continental glaciers melted, they released an enormous volume of water back into the world's oceans. Global sea levels rose by hundreds of feet, drowning coastlines and the human settlements upon them. What was once a thriving port or a fertile river delta could slowly become a memory beneath the waves, not from a sudden disaster, but from a creeping, inevitable change. Of course, sudden disasters did play their part. Tsunamis, triggered by undersea earthquakes or landslides, could deliver a devastating 1-2 punch. First, the quake might damage structures, then a wall of water would surge inland, scouring the landscape and burying everything under thick layers of sand and sediment. This very act of burial, however, is what creates such incredible archaeological treasures. When a city is submerged and quickly covered, it enters a unique state of preservation. The water and silt create an anaerobic environment, one without oxygen. This lack of oxygen slows the decay of organic materials like wood, fabric, and even food remains. Structures that would have rotted away on land are often held in a state of suspended animation, frozen in the moment of their demise. It is a tragic irony that the same forces that destroy these places also perfectly preserve them, sealing them away as time capsules on the seafloor. By studying how these cities fell, we gain profound insight into the vulnerabilities of past societies. Their choices of where to build, how to construct their homes, and their relationship with the sea all come into sharp focus. This knowledge echoes into our present, as many of our greatest modern cities sit on those same dynamic coastlines, facing not just geological forces, but a new era of human-influenced climate change. With this understanding of the forces at play, our journey into the deep can truly begin. The first stop on our journey into the deep brings us to the sunlit waters of the Mediterranean, off the coast of modern Alexandria. Here, beneath the waves, lies a city that for centuries was thought to be nothing more than a traveler's myth, a place mentioned by Herodotus and visited by Helen of Troy and Paris before the Trojan War. This is Thonis, known to the Greeks as Heracleion. For over 1,200 years, it was utterly lost, its existence debated by scholars who only had fragments of ancient texts to go on. Then, in the year 2000, underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio and his team made a discovery that would rewrite history. They found not just a few scattered ruins, but an entire metropolis, frozen in time on the seabed. The sheer scale of the find was breathtaking. Imagine the moment the first colossal statue emerged from the silt, a 16-foot-tall depiction of a pharaoh, its features still sharp, its gaze fixed eternally upward toward the surface it once knew. This was not a minor settlement, it was Egypt's primary gateway to the Mediterranean world, a bustling, cosmopolitan port where Greek merchants and Egyptian priests once walked the same streets. The city's treasures were staggering in their abundance and preservation. Divers recovered delicate gold coins, intricately carved stone tablets known as steles, and the massive remains of a grand temple dedicated to the supreme god Ammon. Perhaps most telling of all were the 64 ancient ships found in the thick clay of the harbor, the largest collection of vessels from this period ever discovered. These ships, ranging from small ceremonial barks to large trading vessels, paint a vivid picture of a city humming with commerce, a vital hub that connected continents and cultures. But how does a city of such immense importance simply vanish? Heracleion's fate was sealed by a combination of nature's forces. Built on the unstable, sinking sediments of the Nile Delta, the city was vulnerable. Researchers believe a combination of soil liquefaction, where solid ground essentially turns to liquid during seismic activity, and a gradual rise in sea levels caused the land to give way. Over time, the buildings, the temples, the very streets of Heracleion slowly sank beneath the Mediterranean, until the last memory of its location faded from human knowledge. Its discovery provides an unparalleled snapshot of Greco-Egyptian life, culture, and religious practice at the height of its power. The artifacts tell a story of syncretism, where Egyptian deities were worshipped alongside Greek ones, and where trade goods from across the known world passed through its warehouses. Heracleion challenges everything we thought we knew about the density and sophistication of ancient maritime networks. It sets a breathtaking precedent, proving that legends can be real and that the greatest chapters of our past may still be waiting, perfectly preserved in the silent, blue archives of the deep. While Heracleion reveals the sophisticated networks of a later age, a far older city waits in the shallows of a Greek bay. Pavlopetri rests in the clear, sun-dappled waters off southern Laconia, a silent blueprint for urban life from a time before written history. Dating back over 5,000 years to the Bronze Age, it holds the profound title of the world's oldest known submerged city. Discovered by a marine geologist in 1967, its true significance only became clear decades later when archaeologists mapped its stunningly complete layout. This is not a collection of scattered ruins, it is an entire town plan preserved on the seabed, a ghostly grid of streets, courtyards, and building foundations that feels almost ready for its inhabitants to return. What makes Pavlopetri so extraordinary is the clarity of its design. From above, you can trace the main thoroughfares, see the outlines of individual homes and larger public buildings, and even identify what researchers believe were courtyards and tombs. This level of preservation offers an unprecedented window into early urban planning, a snapshot of how a community organized itself at the very dawn of complex society in this region. The city's end came not from a violent earthquake or tsunami, but from a slower, more inexorable force. Gradual tectonic shifts combined with the steady rise of post-ice age sea levels slowly flooded the settlement over centuries. This gentle, prolonged submergence is likely why the city's layout remained so eerily intact, as buildings were gradually abandoned rather than violently destroyed. The artifacts recovered from the site tell a quiet story of daily life and industry. Fragments of pottery, simple tools, and loom weights point to a society engaged in textile production and local craftsmanship. The presence of pottery styles from other Aegean islands strongly suggests that Pavlopetri was part of a wider trading network, a small but connected node in the Bronze Age Mediterranean. There is a profound intimacy to this discovery. It allows us to walk, in a sense, through the very streets where early Mycenaean people lived, worked, and traded. Studying Pavlopetri is not just about cataloging ancient stones. It is about understanding the foundational rhythms of community, how our ancestors first came together to build shared spaces, and how those spaces interacted with the natural world around them. This city's story establishes a theme we will see again and again: the long, slow dialogue between human settlement and environmental change. The people of Pavlopetri adapted to their coastline for generations, but ultimately, the sea had the final word. Their experience echoes a fundamental challenge, one that resonates deeply today. How do we build resilient communities in a world of constant change? As we leave the clear waters of this Bronze Age town, our journey takes us to a location where the scale of loss is almost beyond comprehension, to a legendary city whose very existence was doubted until it was found not just underwater, but buried under centuries of mud. The transition from a tangible street plan to a city of divine origin marks a profound shift in our exploration. From the clear blueprint of Pavlopetri, we now journey to a place where history is woven with sacred threads, to the legendary shores of Dwarka. Ancient Sanskrit texts speak of a city of unparalleled splendor, built not by mortal kings, but by the deity Krishna himself. It was described as a fortress of gold and silver, a celestial capital that stood as a beacon of righteousness. Yet the epics foretell a haunting end, that upon Krishna's departure from the mortal world, the glorious city of Dwarka was swallowed by the sea, vanishing from sight but never from memory. For centuries, this was considered a powerful allegory, a spiritual metaphor for the transient nature of worldly things. But what if the waves held a literal truth? In the late 20th century, marine archaeologists began investigating the waters off the coast of modern Gujarat. What they found was not a city of gold, but something perhaps more valuable to history: stone. Submerged stone structures emerged from the seabed, geometric layouts of large blocks that formed foundations, walls, and what appear to be ancient piers. Scattered around them were artifacts, pottery shards, and anchors that spoke of a bustling maritime settlement. The dating of these materials has sparked intense discussion, with some studies suggesting human activity at the site could stretch back an astonishing 9,000 years. This time frame is crucial as it aligns with a period of dramatic global change, the end of the last ice age, when melting glaciers caused sea levels to rise rapidly around the world. A coastal city built during a lower sea level would have faced a creeping, inevitable fate, its streets and temples gradually inundated over generations. This scientific narrative provides a compelling parallel to the legendary account of the city being consumed. The discovery does not prove the divine origins described in Scripture, but it powerfully suggests that the legend is anchored in a profound historical reality. It shows how a catastrophic, real-world event, the flooding of a beloved and important city, could become embedded in the cultural memory of a people. Over millennia, the story of the loss was preserved, retold, and enriched, transforming from a historical disaster into a sacred myth about the end of a divine era. Dwarka stands at a fascinating crossroads. It challenges the rigid boundary we often place between myth and history. The archaeological findings point to a significant, advanced settlement that met a watery end, while the ancient texts preserve the emotional and cultural impact of that loss. Together, they offer a more complete story, one where geology shapes destiny and human memory transforms fact into lasting legend. This site invites a deeper question: how many other ancient stories, dismissed as mere folklore, might be waiting for their kernel of truth to be discovered beneath the soil, or in this case beneath the waves. The line between legend and history is not always blurred by time, sometimes it is shattered in an instant. From the mythic fate of Dwarka, we plunge into the very real and very recent chaos of a city damned. This is Port Royal, Jamaica, a place that earned a title no other city would dare claim, the wickedest city on earth. By the late 1600s, this spit of land was the epicenter of a different kind of force, human ambition at its most unrestrained. It was a sanctuary for pirates and privateers, men like Henry Morgan, who operated with the unofficial blessing of the English crown to raid Spanish ships and ports. The wealth they plundered flooded into Port Royal, fueling a society of staggering excess. Taverns and brothels outnumbered churches, gold was gambled in the streets, and for a brief, blazing moment, it was the richest and most notorious English port in the New World. Many saw its prosperity as a sign of divine favor, but others whispered it was built on a foundation of sin. Then, on the morning of June 7, 1692, the ground itself passed judgment. A massive earthquake, estimated at a magnitude 7.5, struck without warning. The sandy ground upon which the city's lavish buildings stood underwent liquefaction, turning instantly from solid earth into a churning, sinking quicksand. Brick and timber structures slid into the sea as the land collapsed. Then came the tsunami, a wall of water that surged over what remained. In a matter of minutes, 2/3 of the city vanished beneath Kingston Harbor, taking with it an estimated 2,000 lives. The disaster was so sudden, so complete, that it was interpreted across Europe as an act of divine retribution, a moral lesson written in sinking stone and drowning waves. Yet this very suddenness created an archaeological marvel. Because Port Royal sank so quickly and was buried in sediment, it entered a state of remarkable preservation. Underwater excavations have revealed a city frozen at 11:43 in the morning. Archaeologists have recovered a pocket watch. Its hands stopped at the precise moment the first tremors hit. They have found buildings still standing, their walls intact, with everyday objects scattered on floors as if the occupants had just stepped away. A pewter spoon rests where it fell. A collection of pipes lies ready to be smoked, and delicate glassware sits on a shelf. These are not just artifacts, they are echoes of interrupted lives. The site also tells the city's darker story. Leg irons and manacles speak to a brutal slave trade that underpinned its economy. The recovered wealth, including gold coins and ornate jewelry, contrasts sharply with simpler items, painting a picture of extreme inequality. Port Royal is a unique kind of time capsule. It preserves not a long-forgotten civilization, but a vibrant, flawed, and very human society captured at its peak, in the very second of its catastrophic end. It serves as a sobering reminder that human hubris, the belief that we are masters of our domain, can be undone by the immutable physics of our planet. The city's legacy is a dual one, a cautionary tale about vice and vulnerability, and an unparalleled window into the raw, unfiltered reality of colonial Caribbean life. Its streets, now silent and visited by fish, challenge us to consider what we build upon, both morally and geologically. The debate over Port Royal's fate is stark and historical, but the Pacific Ocean holds a mystery where even the question itself is unresolved. Off the coast of Japan's remote Yonaguni Island, divers discovered something that defies easy explanation. Looming from the deep, a series of massive sandstone structures rise like a sunken acropolis. Their surfaces are unnaturally flat, their edges sharp and angular, forming what appear to be vast steps, wide terraces, and even a monolithic platform that looks like a stage. Since its discovery by a local dive tour operator in 1986, the Yonaguni monument has ignited a passionate and enduring controversy. Is this the spectacular work of nature, or could it be the eroded remnant of a city from a time before recorded history? Geologists who argue for a natural origin point to the powerful forces at play. The sandstone in this region is prone to fracturing along straight lines, and the strong underwater currents of the area could, over millennia, erode the rock into these seemingly architectural forms. They see a stunning example of what is known as sheet jointing and marine erosion, a natural sculpture gallery created by the persistent hand of the ocean. Yet, those who believe the structures show signs of human intervention point to specific, perplexing details. They highlight features that look like carved channels, symmetrical columns, and circular depressions that resemble post holes. Most compelling to some are two tall, slender rocks that stand side by side, which proponents call the twin pillars, and a flat stone with a precise, rectangular cutout that has been dubbed the turtle stone, suggesting a possible ceremonial or symbolic purpose. If these features were indeed crafted by human hands, the implications are staggering. Dating the site is incredibly difficult, but some researchers suggest that if it is artificial, it would have to have been constructed when the area was above sea level, potentially 10,000 years ago or more. This time frame places it at the end of the last ice age, a period when vast continental shelves were exposed, and it brushes against the edges of legend, whispering of lost civilizations like the mythical continent of Mu. Whether you see the meticulous work of ancient stonemasons or the magnificent chaos of natural geology, the Yonaguni monument serves a profound purpose. It captivates our imagination and forces a fundamental question: how do we define the line between nature and artifact? It pushes archaeologists, geologists, and all of us to look more carefully, to question our assumptions about the timeline of human achievement. The site may never yield a definitive answer, and perhaps that is its greatest gift. It remains a powerful symbol of the ocean's capacity to hide not just lost cities, but lost possibilities, reminding us that some of history's most compelling chapters are written in stone we do not yet know how to read. The seafloor near Alexandria holds more than just the trading hub of Heracleion. In the shadow of the modern city's coastline, another, more personal world lies submerged. This is the ancient royal quarter of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the very heart of power where Cleopatra VII once walked. Here, the Mediterranean does not hide a commercial port, but a palace complex, a landscape of political drama and personal tragedy now resting in silent, watery ruins. The cause of its descent was the relentless geology of the region, a combination of tectonic subsidence and powerful earthquakes that caused this entire section of coastline to sink beneath the waves centuries ago. For modern archaeologists, this underwater site is a gift of preservation. While the bustling city of Alexandria above ground has been built and rebuilt over millennia, obscuring its ancient past, the submerged royal quarters have been protected from urban development. Encased in sediment and shielded from modern construction, they offer a purer, more intact window into the past than almost any site on land. The discoveries made here are breathtakingly direct. Marine explorers led by Frank Gaudio have mapped vast foundations, walked along ancient causeways, and encountered statues that still stand guard. Sphinxes with enigmatic smiles peer through the blue gloom. Grand columns toppled like fallen giants mark the outlines of temples and palaces. Among the most tantalizing finds are structures believed to be part of the royal mausoleum, the very location where Cleopatra and her Roman lover, Mark Antony, were said to have been laid to rest. This connection transforms the site from a collection of ruins into a stage for one of history's most enduring stories. We are not just looking at stones, we are glimpsing the physical backdrop of alliances, romances, and a desperate struggle for a dynasty's survival. The submergence of this place creates a profound irony. The same natural forces that claimed it have also conserved it, freezing a moment of Hellenistic Egyptian grandeur in time. Every artifact recovered, from a simple coin to a colossal statue head, is a tangible link to the flesh and blood individuals who shaped the ancient Mediterranean world. This sunken palace complex reminds us that history is not an abstract series of events. It is a human story written in architecture and art, now waiting in the quiet deep for its next chapter to be read. 8,000 years ago, a community gathered stones from the shore to build something lasting. Today, that circle rests 16 feet beneath the Mediterranean, a silent monument to one of humanity's first great transitions. This is Atlit off the coast of Israel, a submerged village from the pre-pottery Neolithic era that offers not just ruins, but an intimate portrait of life at the dawn of agriculture. Discovered in 1984, this site is a time capsule from a pivotal moment when our ancestors were learning to settle down, to farm, and to build permanent communities. The finds here are breathtaking in their simplicity and their significance. Among the foundations of stone houses, archaeologists found a semicircle of massive stones, some weighing hundreds of pounds, arranged with clear intent. This structure, with a freshwater spring at its center, is believed to have been a site for ritual or communal gathering, a hint that even in these earliest villages, people sought meaning and connection beyond mere survival. Perhaps the most profound insights, however, come from the resting place of the villagers themselves. Studies of the remains found at the site revealed the earliest known cases of tuberculosis in humans, offering a sobering glimpse into the health challenges that emerged when people began living in close proximity with domesticated animals. This evidence is not presented graphically but understood as a key part of the human story, showing how our shift to settled life brought both new prosperity and new vulnerabilities. Yet the story of Atlit is overwhelmingly one of ingenuity. These early farmers dug a deep, stone-lined well to access fresh water, a remarkable feat of engineering for its time. They domesticated cattle, processed grain, and lived in sturdy homes. Theirs was a society of remarkable adaptation, having learned to harness their environment. But then, the environment shifted in a way they could not control. The village was eventually abandoned, not to invaders or conflict, but to the rising sea. As the last glaciers of the Ice Age continued to melt, global sea levels crept steadily upward, encroaching on the fertile coast where they had built their lives. The saltwater likely contaminated their fresh water sources and flooded their fields, forcing a slow, generational retreat to higher ground. This makes Atlit one of the clearest and earliest examples of a community displaced by climate change. The exceptional preservation of the site, with wooden tools, plant seeds, and animal bones all surviving in the silt, allows us to see this process not as an abstract historical event, but as a lived human experience. We see a resilient people who innovated, who built community structures, and who ultimately made the difficult decision to leave their home behind. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that our relationship with the planet has always been a delicate balance, and that the sea which gives life can also, slowly and inexorably, reclaim it. The story of human progress is often written in difficult choices, a truth embodied by the silent city, resting 130 feet beneath a man-made lake in China. This is Cheng, the Lion City, a place not claimed by an angry earth or a rising sea, but deliberately sacrificed to them. In 1959, the Chinese government made a decision to meet the growing energy and water needs of the modern era. They dammed the river, and the valley that held the ancient city began to fill. Slowly, methodically, the waters of the newly created Qingdao Lake Reservoir rose over the magnificent stone arches, the towering city walls, and the ornate temples of a metropolis dating back to the Eastern Han Dynasty. For over half a century, Cheng was a secret kept by the deep, its existence known but inaccessible, a ghost in the machinery of progress. Then, in 2001, explorers and archaeologists finally had the technology to return. What they found was astonishing. Unlike cities shattered by earthquakes, the Lion City was perfectly preserved. The cold, fresh water of the lake, with little current and minimal biological activity, had acted as a perfect conservation fluid. Intricate stone carvings of lions, dragons, and phoenixes, from which the city drew its name, remained as sharp and detailed as the day the last resident left. Grand archways stood intact, and entire 5-story pagodas could be seen, their wooden elements long gone but their stone skeletons eerily complete. This was no ruin, it was a snapshot. A time capsule of imperial Chinese urban design, artistry, and civic planning, frozen in a state of graceful suspension. The submergence of Cheng forces a profound and uncomfortable reflection. It represents a conscious trade-off where a piece of tangible history was exchanged for modern development, for electricity, irrigation, and the needs of millions. There is a deep poignancy in knowing that its magnificent carvings are visited only by divers and robotic cameras, not by pilgrims or townspeople. Yet, in a twist of fate, this very act of flooding became an act of preservation. The water protected the city from the weathering of wind and sun, and from the potential damage of 20th-century urban expansion. It was saved by being lost. Today, Cheng offers a unique duality. It is a monument to what was willingly given up in the name of the future, and it has become, entirely unintentionally, one of the world's most pristine underwater archaeological sites. It asks us a difficult question as we continue to build and develop in our own time. What treasures are we placing in the path of progress, and what legacies might we be creating for the future, even in the moments we believe we are leaving the past behind? Baiae was where Rome's power brokers came to unwind, a glittering resort town whose reputation for luxury and scandal was legendary. This was no ordinary coastal village. It was a playground for emperors, senators, and poets, a place where the thermal springs were as hot as the political gossip. Figures like Julius Caesar, Nero, and the philosopher Seneca all had villas here, drawn by the medicinal waters and the promise of escape from the formality of Rome. The parties were the stuff of law, with feasts that stretched for days and indulgences that shocked even the jaded Roman moralists. Baiae was a symbol of an empire at the peak of its wealth and confidence, a place built on the belief that pleasure was the ultimate reward for power. Yet the very ground beneath this paradise was restless. Baiae sits directly on the rim of the Campi Flegrae, a vast volcanic caldera often called the Burning Fields. Beginning around the 3rd century, the land began a slow, inexorable descent. This phenomenon, known as Bradaisism, is a gradual rising and falling of the earth caused by the movement of magma and hydrothermal fluids deep below. In Baiae's case, the land was sinking, and the calm waters of the Bay of Naples began to claim it inch by inch, century by century. The grand villas, the mosaic-tiled bathhouses, and the marble colonnades were gradually abandoned to the sea. Today, that same sea offers an experience found nowhere else. Just a few feet below the surface, snorkelers and divers can glide over the stunning remains of this sunken resort. It is an eerily intimate encounter with history. You can swim across a polychrome mosaic floor, its geometric patterns still vibrant, that once lay in the triclinium of a lavish dining room. You can weave between the stumps of marble columns that once supported a portico where senators debated under the sun. Statues of gods and emperors now stand sentinel for schools of fish, their stone eyes gazing through the blue haze. This underwater museum provides a direct, tactile connection to the daily life of Roman leisure, far more vivid than any textbook description. The silent, sunken halls of Baiae speak volumes about the transience of even the greatest human endeavors. Here was a city that embodied the apex of Roman culture and engineering, a place literally built upon the volcanic power it celebrated. Its fate is a powerful metaphor, a reminder that the forces of the earth operate on a timescale that dwarfs human empires. The same thermal energy that filled its baths and fueled its allure ultimately conspired with the sea to reclaim it. Baiae's legacy is dual, a testament to both the exquisite artistry of its builders and the profound humility that nature ultimately demands. It invites us to reflect on what we build upon and what remains when the laughter and the music fade away. The clear waters of Baiae offer a museum you can swim through, but some of the ocean's greatest secrets are hidden in darkness. In the murky depths of India's Gulf of Khambhat, a discovery challenges the very foundations of history. During a routine pollution survey in 2001, sonar equipment pinged back something utterly unexpected, not random debris, but the ghostly outlines of massive geometric structures. The scans revealed what appeared to be large, symmetrical formations, including something resembling a vast stepped structure lying 120 feet beneath the turbid water. This was not a single artifact, but the potential layout of an entire settlement, a city swallowed by time and tide. The initial findings sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Among the sonar images, dredging brought up physical evidence, including pieces of pottery, worked wood, and stone tools. When samples of this material underwent preliminary dating, the results were staggering, suggesting an age of up to 9,500 years. If these dates were to be verified, the implications would rewrite history books. It would mean a sophisticated urban culture existed on the Indian subcontinent thousands of years before the rise of the celebrated Indus Valley civilization, pushing the clock for complex human society in the region back into a shadowy prehistoric era. This claim, however, sits at the center of a fierce and ongoing controversy. The Gulf of Khambhat presents a perfect storm of archaeological challenges. The water is exceptionally deep and dark with near-zero visibility, and powerful currents constantly shift the seabed, making traditional excavation and documentation incredibly difficult. Critics argue that the sonar images, while compelling, could be interpreted as natural rock formations shaped by ancient river channels. The dating of the artifacts is also hotly debated, as the items were recovered from dredged sediment, meaning they could have been displaced from elsewhere, making it hard to prove they belong to the structures seen on the sonar map. This site, often called the Gulf of Khambhat civilization, embodies the thrilling yet frustrating frontier of underwater archaeology. It represents a tantalizing possibility, a clue to a chapter of human achievement we have not yet dared to write. Whether it ultimately proves to be a lost advanced culture or a remarkable geological coincidence, its investigation is a masterclass in scientific rigor. It shows us that discovery is only the first step, followed by the meticulous, often contentious process of verification. The murky waters of the Gulf are a metaphor for our own understanding, reminding us that the past is not always clear and that the most revolutionary truths often lie just beyond the edge of the light, waiting for technology and patience to bring them into focus. The murky depths of one gulf conceal their secrets, while the sunlit shallows of another offer a story written in stone and clear water. On the northeastern coast of Crete, the ancient city of Olous does not hide. It rests just beneath the surface of Elaunda Bay, its ruins so visible from above that you can trace their outlines from a boat. This was no minor settlement, but a proud and independent Dorian city-state, one powerful enough to mint its own coins and dedicate a celebrated temple to the goddess Britomartis, the sweet maiden of the mountains and hunting. For centuries, Olous thrived as a maritime power, its prosperity built upon the sea that would one day claim it. The city's end was not a single catastrophe, but a slow, persistent negotiation with the elements. Researchers point to a familiar combination: the relentless seismic activity common to the region gradually lowering the land, while post-Ice Age sea levels continued their slow, global creep. Over generations, the waterfront advanced. Streets that once echoed with the footsteps of merchants and priests became canals. and foundations of homes and public buildings found themselves permanently bathed in the gentle Mediterranean. Today, the most striking feature is a long, straight stone pavement that begins on the modern shore and marches purposefully into the sea, disappearing beneath the turquoise water as if pointing the way to a vanished world. This is not a path to a mythical Atlantis, but a very real, very tangible connection to daily life in the classical world. That submerged roadway speaks volumes about adaptation. The people of Olous did not abandon their city at the first sign of encroaching water. They adapted their infrastructure, likely building piers and adjusting their harbor works as the shoreline shifted. They lived with the change, a testament to the resilience of coastal communities faced with a transforming environment. The accessibility of Olous makes it a uniquely powerful classroom. Unlike sites requiring advanced diving technology, here history is immediately present. Snorkelers can float above the lines of walls, peer down at the geometric patterns of foundations, and physically follow that ancient road into the deep. This direct encounter transforms abstract concepts of sea level rise and seismic subsidence into a personal, sensory experience. You are not just learning about a sunken city, you are witnessing its silhouette. Furthermore, Olous beautifully illustrates how these submerged remains are not merely relics of the past, but active participants in the present. The visible ruins have become woven into the cultural and economic fabric of modern Crete, drawing visitors and fostering a living connection to the region's layered history. It stands as a gentle, sun-drenched reminder that the dialogue between human civilization and the rising sea is an ancient one, and that the footprints of our ancestors are often waiting just below the waterline, inviting us to look down and remember. The ruins of Olous are a visible testament to slow change, but history also records moments of sudden, absolute erasure. On a winter night in the year 373 before the Common Era, the powerful Greek city-state of Helike simply vanished. Ancient writers described a cataclysm of staggering force, a massive earthquake that shook the land, followed by a colossal wave from the sea that swept over the city. When the sun rose, Helike was gone, submerged beneath a newly formed lagoon. The destruction was so total, so conceptually overwhelming, that it echoed through the ages. Philosophers and historians took note, with many scholars later suggesting this very event planted the seed for Plato's famous allegory of Atlantis, a mighty civilization punished by the gods and swallowed by the ocean in a single day and night. For centuries, Helike itself became a kind of ghost, a place referenced in texts but lost to the landscape, its exact location a mystery that tantalized archaeologists. The breakthrough came in the 1990s when researchers, combining ancient accounts with geological surveys, began to look not underwater but underground. They discovered that the seismic event had caused the ground to liquefy, and the subsequent tsunami deposited a thick layer of sediment over the devastated city. Instead of resting on the seafloor, Helike was buried beneath coastal plains, preserved under layers of silt and clay. Excavations revealed a city frozen in its final moment. Foundations of buildings were found aligned in orderly streets, and among the ruins, a profound clue emerged: numerous coins and artifacts bearing the trident of Poseidon, the god of the sea and earthquakes. This confirmed ancient records that Helike was a major religious center, the leader of a league of cities that worshipped Poseidon. Its destruction by the very forces the city sought to appease through worship added a layer of tragic irony that captivated the classical world. The discovery of Helike did more than just find a lost city. It validated the historical accuracy of ancient texts that had been read for millennia. It proved that a disaster of such legendary scale did indeed happen, transforming a story that bordered on myth into a documented geological and archaeological event. This connection is profoundly important, It demonstrates how a real, traumatic collective experience can evolve into a foundational cultural story, a warning or a lesson passed down through generations. Helike's legacy is a powerful reminder that our oldest legends are often not pure fiction, but distant echoes of real events, magnified by time and retelling. It challenges us to listen more carefully to the old stories, for they may hold not just moral truths, but historical ones, waiting for the right moment to be unearthed. The fate of Helike reminds us that entire landscapes can vanish, not just cities. Off the southern coast of England, the sea hides a world that predates kings, castles, and written history. This is Bouldnor Cliff near the Isle of Wight, a place where 8,000 years ago you would not have needed a boat at all. You could have walked through a dense, temperate forest, the ground firm beneath your feet, all the way to what is now continental Europe. Today, that ancient woodland lies submerged, a drowned landscape preserved in the silty seabed of the newly formed English Channel. It is not a city of stone, but a settlement of a different kind, a Mesolithic community whose story is written in tree stumps, flint tools, and a single, staggering grain of wheat. Archaeologists diving in the cold, dark waters have uncovered something that quietly rewrites the narrative of prehistoric Britain. They found carefully worked timber, planks that showed clear signs of advanced woodworking, including complex splitting and shaping techniques previously associated with much later periods. This suggests these hunter-gatherers possessed sophisticated boat-building knowledge far earlier than anyone believed, but the most revolutionary find was microscopic. Sediment samples contained ancient DNA evidence of a plant that did not belong, wheat. This was not a wild native grass, but a domesticated species that could only have come from the European mainland, hundreds of miles across open water. This single genetic clue shatters old assumptions. It implies that 8,000 years ago, long before the great stone circles were erected, the people living here were not isolated primitive tribes. They were connected. They were traders navigating the changing seascapes in capable vessels, exchanging ideas, goods, and perhaps even seeds with communities far away. Bouldnor Cliff paints a portrait of a resilient society in flux. As the great ice sheets melted, sea levels rose relentlessly, drowning their forest and transforming their familiar hunting grounds into a widening strait. These people did not simply retreat, they adapted. They turned their advanced woodcraft toward the sea, building the vessels that would allow them to thrive in a new, aquatic world. Their settlement, a network of activity centered on the forest edge, was a different kind of urban center, one built on knowledge of the land and the water rather than permanent monuments. This submerged forest challenges our very definition of a city. It asks us to see community not just in stone foundations and grand temples, but in shared knowledge, in trade networks, and in the collective adaptation to a changing world. The story of Bouldnor Cliff is not one of catastrophic loss, but of gradual transformation and astonishing innovation. It reveals that the roots of British civilization are far older and more deeply connected to Europe than we ever imagined, all preserved in the silent, sunken soil beneath the waves. The discovery of Heracleion was not an isolated event, but the first glimpse of a much larger world lost beneath the bay. Sharing the same sunken coastline in Abu Qir Bay are the ruins of two other major centers, Canopus and Menouthis. These cities formed a powerful triad with Heracleion, a submerged metropolitan district that reveals the astonishing density and spiritual richness of the ancient Nile Delta. While Heracleion thrived as a commercial hub, Canopus and Menouthis carved out a different kind of fame, becoming legendary centers of pilgrimage and healing, drawing devotees from across the Mediterranean world. They were the heart of the cult of Serapis, a deliberate fusion of Egyptian and Greek deities created to unite the cultures under Ptolemaic rule. Here, the lines between faiths blurred in a grand spiritual experiment. The same geological forces that claimed Heracleion sealed the fate of its neighbors. The unstable delta sediments, combined with seismic activity and rising waters, caused this entire stretch of coast to gradually sink, submerging temples, streets, and sanctuaries beneath a blanket of clay and sea. The archaeological finds from these sister cities are deeply evocative. Divers have recovered statues of gods and goddesses, stone blocks inscribed with prayers in both Greek and Egyptian hieroglyphs, and fragments of the grand temples where these rituals took place. Each artifact speaks to a society actively blending traditions, seeking common ground in shared worship. A statue of the goddess Isis found here might bear Hellenistic artistic styling, while an inscription to Serapis references his role as both a Greek healer and an Egyptian lord of the underworld. This was not merely tolerance, it was active syncretism, the creation of a new, hybrid spiritual identity for a new age. Beyond the religious insight, the mapping of these three cities has solved a long-standing geographical mystery. Their locations, lying in a straight line on the seabed, have allowed researchers to chart the precise path of the Canopic branch of the Nile, the river's most important western distributary, which has been completely lost on land for over 1,000 years. This waterway was not just a source of fresh water, it was a superhighway for ideas, goods, and people, the lifeblood of the region's prosperity. Seeing these three urban centers together transforms our understanding. We are not looking at isolated ports, but at interconnected nodes in a vast cultural and economic network. The scale of development here forces us to reimagine the ancient delta not as a marshy frontier, but as a densely populated, highly organized, and deeply spiritual landscape. The loss of Canopus, Menouthis, and Heracleion is a stark lesson in regional vulnerability. It shows how an entire district, a cradle of commerce and faith, can be reshaped not by war or social collapse, but by the slow, powerful dialogue between a shifting river, a sinking land, and a rising sea. Their silent ruins lying together in the deep are a testament to the fragility of even the most vibrant human landscapes when the earth itself decides to move. A prosperous medieval town can be erased from the map in a single night. In the marshy delta where the Scheldt River meets the North Sea, the town of Saeftinghe stood as a testament to human determination, a thriving community built on rich, reclaimed peatland. It boasted a protective castle, fertile farms, and a proud population, a symbol of the Dutch mastery over water. Then, on All Saints' Day in 1570, a catastrophic storm surge known as the All Saints' Flood overwhelmed the region's defensive dikes. The sea did not just flood the town, it consumed it entirely. When the waters finally receded, Saeftinghe was gone, its land scoured away and replaced by a vast new tidal inlet. The castle, the homes, the very soil upon which people walked vanished beneath the waves, transforming a center of life into a legend of loss. Today, that area is known as the drowned land of Saeftinghe, one of the largest salt marshes in Europe. It is a haunting, beautiful wilderness where the sea dictates the rhythm of the day. Only during the very lowest tides does this watery realm give up some of its secrets. Mudflats recede to reveal the ghostly outlines of old foundations, fragments of brick and pottery, and the skeletal remains of tree roots from the drowned forests that once stood here. These fleeting glimpses are poignant reminders of the vibrant world that was lost, a civilization reclaimed by the element it fought so hard to control. The story of Saeftinghe is not an ancient mystery, but a relatively recent chapter in humanity's enduring struggle with the coast. It occurred in an age of growing technological confidence, yet it underscores a humbling truth that our defenses are only as strong as the worst storm nature can muster. This event was not an isolated tragedy, but part of the painful, iterative process that forged the Dutch national identity. Each catastrophic flood, from Saeftinghe to the Great Disaster of 1953, led to harder lessons, more sophisticated engineering, and a deeper collective resolve to protect what remained. The town's fate is a powerful emblem of this eternal conflict, representing a sacrifice that informed centuries of future innovation. In a modern context, Saeftinghe as lesson rings with increasing urgency. It demonstrates the profound vulnerability of low-lying communities to extreme weather and storm surges, a vulnerability now amplified by our warming climate and rising seas. The drowned land is a natural monument to climate variability, a stark preview of the challenges facing coastal populations worldwide. It asks us a difficult question as we engineer ever more complex solutions to hold back the ocean. Are we building permanent fortresses, or are we, like the people of Saeftinghe, engaged in a continuous and evolving negotiation with a force that ultimately holds the upper hand? The silent marsh, with its whispering reeds and buried foundations, holds that conversation in suspension, a dialogue between human ambition and the immutable power of the sea. High in the thin air of the Andes, a different kind of water holds its own secrets. Lake Titicaca, the world's highest navigable lake, is a place of profound spiritual power for the indigenous peoples of the region. Beneath its famously deep blue surface, resting on the lakebed over 12,000 feet above sea level, lie submerged stone structures that whisper of a civilization that mastered these mountains long before the Inca. These are not the ruins of a coastal port, but of a ceremonial center built by the Tiwanaku culture, a society that dominated the central Andes for centuries, beginning over 1,000 years ago. Their empire was a marvel of high-altitude engineering and agriculture, and the lake was the sacred heart of their cosmology. Recent underwater surveys have revealed meticulously constructed terraced walls that descend into the depths, along with what appears to be a sunken temple platform. These are not random piles of rock, but deliberate architectural forms placed with intention. Divers have recovered offerings left in this watery realm, including finely crafted ceramic containers and fragments of gold foil, precious items given to the depths as part of ancient rituals. These discoveries paint a vivid picture of a people who saw the lake not just as a source of water, but as a living deity, a portal to other realms where gifts to the gods ensured balance and fertility for the land above. The submergence of these sites was likely a gradual process, a conversation between culture and climate. Over the centuries, the water level of Lake Titicaca has fluctuated dramatically, influenced by long-term patterns of rainfall and drought in the sensitive alpine environment. A ceremonial site built along the shore during a period of lower water could have been slowly engulfed as the lake expanded during a wetter climatic phase. This slow encroachment might even have been incorporated into the ritual life of the Tiwanaku, a visible symbol of the lake's power and dominion. The preservation here is aided by the unique conditions. The cold, fresh water and the lack of strong currents at depth have kept these stone offerings remarkably intact. This inland underwater site fundamentally expands our idea of where to look for lost history. It proves that significant archaeological treasures are not exclusive to the ocean floor. They can be preserved in any body of water that has witnessed the rise and fall of human societies. The cold, high-altitude environment of Lake Titicaca has acted as a perfect time capsule, safeguarding a spiritual landscape that tells us the Tiwanaku understood their world as an integrated whole, where the mountains, the sky, and the deep lake were all connected in a sacred geography. Their legacy, now resting in the silent, sunlit depths, challenges us to listen to all waters, for they all may hold chapters of the human story. Legends of sunken cities are not confined to the warm Mediterranean or the sacred high lakes. They echo across the stormy coasts of the North Sea as well. Here, in the vast tidal flats of the Wadden Sea, lies the story of Rungholt, a place often called the Atlantis of the North. For over 600 years, it existed primarily as a haunting folktale, a cautionary whisper about a wealthy, sinful trading town swallowed by the sea as divine punishment. Mariners would speak of hearing church bells ringing beneath the waves on quiet nights, a ghostly reminder of a community lost. This was not just a story, it was a cultural memory, a way for generations to process a trauma so vast it demanded a moral explanation. Then modern science began to listen. Using advanced geophysical surveys like magnetic gradiometry and sediment core sampling, researchers started to map what the tides had hidden. Their instruments revealed the faint but undeniable footprints of human settlement beneath the mud. They found the outlines of artificial dwelling mounds, known as terps, which communities built to raise their homes above the regular high tide. They traced the ghosts of drainage canals, sophisticated systems used to manage the waterlogged land for agriculture. They even located the remains of salt-making works, the very industry that likely generated the town's considerable wealth. These were not the stuff of myth, they were the practical, physical evidence of a real, thriving medieval port. The catalyst for its disappearance was a specific and documented cataclysm, the Groot Mandrank, or Great Drowning of Men, a catastrophic storm surge that struck the Frisian coast in 1362. This event was a monster of wind and water, breaching dikes and flooding vast stretches of reclaimed land. Rungholt, built on the precarious, sinking peatlands of the region, stood directly in its path. The storm did not just flood the town, it erased it, scouring the landscape and leaving only scattered foundations beneath the shifting sands. The discovery of Rungholt's physical remains creates a profound dialogue between story and stone. It shows how a real, geological disaster becomes woven into the fabric of cultural identity. The folk narrative of a town punished for its pride or its vices is a human attempt to find meaning in chaos, to impose a moral order on the terrifying randomness of nature. By confirming the town's existence, archaeology does not disprove the legend, it gives it a foundation. It validates the core truth that a community was here, and it was tragically lost, allowing us to understand the legend as the emotional and historical artifact it truly is. This sunken city adds a crucial layer to our understanding. It reminds us that every submerged site we explore began with a living community that told stories about itself, and whose sudden end became a story told for centuries after. The silent, muddy fields of the Wadden Sea now speak of both human ingenuity and profound vulnerability, a testament to how we build, how we remember, and how the sea can rewrite our maps and our myths in a single, stormy night. The seafloor near Zakynthos presents a puzzle that challenges our very desire to find what we seek. In the clear blue waters off this Greek island, divers discovered something that looked unmistakably man-made, a sprawling arrangement of stone that resembled ancient ruins. There were what appeared to be cobblestone pavements, perfect circles that could be column bases, and linear formations like the foundations of walls. The initial excitement was electric, suggesting the discovery of a major submerged settlement, perhaps a lost city from the classical era swallowed by an earthquake. The story captured the public imagination, a perfect narrative of history reclaimed from the deep. Yet, as scientists moved in to investigate, a more complex and equally fascinating truth began to emerge. Detailed geological analysis revealed that these remarkably regular structures were not carved by human hands, but built by the slow, persistent work of nature over millennia. The culprit was not an ancient architect but methane. Natural gas seeping from the seabed provided a food source for unique microbes. As these microorganisms consumed the methane, they produced a byproduct that acted as a natural cement, binding the surrounding sand and sediment into solid, stone-like formations. Over vast stretches of time, this process created the pavements, the circular discs, and the colonnade-like shapes, a stunning example of what is known as a microbiolite. This natural explanation, however, did not diminish the site's importance. Instead, it ignited a valuable and ongoing discussion about perception and evidence in underwater exploration. The Zakynthos formations sit right on that intriguing border where nature's artistry so perfectly mimics human intention that it fools even the hopeful eye. This case became a masterclass in scientific methodology, showing how initial excitement must always be tempered with rigorous testing, from core sampling to mineral analysis. The debate itself drove discovery, pushing researchers to better understand these rare seabed processes and to develop more precise tools for distinguishing between a natural wonder and a cultural artifact. For all of us watching, it serves as a humbling and thrilling reminder. Not every compelling shape in the deep is a lost city, but the pursuit of that possibility is what propels us to look closer. The true treasure of the Zakynthos site may not be a sunken metropolis, but the lesson it offers that the ocean's greatest mysteries often lie not in confirming what we expect to find, but in revealing the astonishing, unexpected processes that shape our world unseen. This natural masterpiece invites us to marvel not at the works of forgotten builders, but at the patient, creative power of the planet itself. The debate over what is natural and what is human-made finds its deepest echo in the cold, dark waters of the Black Sea. Here, a unique environment creates a preservation chamber unlike any other. Below a certain depth, the sea is anoxic, completely devoid of oxygen. This sterile stillness has perfectly preserved ancient wooden shipwrecks for millennia, their masts and hulls appearing as if they sank only yesterday. But some researchers believe this deep, dark museum holds far more than ships. It may contain the remnants of a lost world, swallowed not by a gradual rise but by a cataclysmic deluge. The hypothesis centers on a dramatic geological event around 7,600 years ago. At the time, the Black Sea was a much smaller freshwater lake, isolated from the Mediterranean. Then, as glaciers melted and global sea levels rose, saltwater finally breached the natural dam at the Bosporus Strait. According to one compelling theory, what followed was not a trickle, but a torrent, a catastrophic influx of seawater that could have raised the lake's level by dozens of feet in a matter of months or years. This event would have flooded an area the size of Ireland, inundating the Neolithic farming communities that lived along its fertile shores. The search for evidence of these submerged settlements pushes technology to its limits. Sonar mapping of the ancient, now drowned coastline has revealed what look like river channels and former beach ridges, confirming that this land was once dry. More tantalizing are sonar images of rectilinear shapes and mounds on the seabed that some archaeologists interpret as potential structures, though others caution they could be natural formations. The investigation is painstaking, a slow process of gathering data from a hostile, profoundly deep environment. The cultural implications of this research are vast. If a flood of this scale and speed did occur, it would have been a trauma of unimaginable proportion for the people living there. Survivors would have fled in all directions, carrying their stories, their agricultural knowledge, and their languages with them. This single event, some scholars suggest, could have been the catalyst that spurred the rapid spread of farming cultures across Europe and Asia. It also touches on a profound human question. Could this real, regional catastrophe be the seed from which countless global flood myths grew? From the Epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Noah, cultures separated by continents share a striking narrative of a great deluge. The Black Sea hypothesis offers a possible historical kernel for these universal stories, a real event that became woven into the foundational myths of civilizations. Whether one definitive flood occurred or it was a more complex series of changes, the research here underscores a powerful truth. The floor of the Black Sea holds a record of sudden, transformative environmental change that reshaped human prehistory. It reminds us that our oldest stories often speak not just of gods and heroes, but of the Earth's own powerful, memory-altering forces. Even as we map the ancient floods of the Black Sea, the Mediterranean reveals it is not yet done sharing its secrets. In 2023, the waters off Egypt's Nile Delta yielded a startling new chapter, the sunken city of Nephthys. While conducting a routine geophysical survey, a team of archaeologists detected anomalies on the seabed that did not match any known charts. What they found upon closer investigation was an entire urban layout, a complex of buildings, protective walls, and fortifications that spoke of a significant, organized settlement. Scattered among the stone foundations were fragments of pottery, whose style and craftsmanship have been preliminarily dated to the late period of ancient Egypt, a dynamic era over 2,000 years ago. The city's proposed association with Nephthys, a protective goddess often linked to transition and the edges of the river, adds a layer of profound cultural meaning to the physical discovery. This is not a city we were searching for by name. It is one we never knew existed, emerging silently from the silt to claim its place in history. The significance of this discovery cannot be overstated, precisely because of where it was found. The Egyptian coast, particularly the Nile Delta, is one of the most intensively studied archaeological regions on Earth. Generations of scholars have combed through texts and excavated sites, believing the broad outlines of the historical map were firmly drawn. The emergence of an entire city from these well-traveled waters shatters that assumption. It is a powerful reminder that our knowledge of the past is always provisional, a sketch that new technology constantly helps us redraw with greater detail. This find did not come from a lucky dive, but from the sophisticated marriage of high-resolution sonar, magnetic sensors, and autonomous underwater vehicles. These tools allow researchers to scan vast areas of the seabed with incredible precision, seeing through layers of sediment to detect the ghostly outlines of human activity invisible to the naked eye. The sunken city of Nephthys stands as a brilliant emblem of archaeology's future. It exemplifies how the frontier of discovery is not shrinking, but expanding downward into the deep. Each new technological leap, from more sensitive robotic cameras to advanced DNA sampling of underwater sediments, promises to peel back another layer of the ocean's protective covering. This ongoing revolution assures us that the list of 20 submerged cities is not a final tally, but merely the beginning of a much longer catalogue. Every new grid scanned, every new anomaly investigated, holds the potential to unveil another forgotten metropolis, another lost chapter of trade, belief, or daily life. The ocean floor, it seems, is the greatest history book ever written, and we are only now learning how to turn its pages. With each new city that rises from the depths, a piece of our collective story is recovered, challenging old narratives and filling in blank spaces on the map of human achievement. The silent stones of Nephthys ask us to consider what else remains hidden, waiting for the right moment and the right technology to finally tell its story. Nephthys is a promise of what is still to come. The future of sunken city exploration is not about finding a few more ruins. It is about systematically reading a lost continent we have only just begun to map. This new era is powered by a quiet revolution in technology. Autonomous underwater vehicles glide through the deep for days, mapping vast swaths of seabed with laser-like sonar that can distinguish a single amphora from a rock. Researchers now extract ancient environmental DNA from core samples of sediment, allowing them to reconstruct the entire ecosystem that surrounded a city, from the crops people grew to the livestock they kept, all from a teaspoon of ancient mud. This is not just archaeology, it is time travel, letting us smell the air and see the landscape of a world that vanished beneath the waves. With these tools, the pace of discovery is shifting from chance finds to targeted investigation. Future missions are already looking beyond the Mediterranean to frontiers once thought unreachable. Off the coast of Australia, vast continental shelves were dry land during the last ice age, home to indigenous cultures for tens of thousands of years. Their stories and settlements now lie submerged, holding chapters of human history that could redefine the narrative of global migration. Similarly, in the warming Arctic, receding ice may reveal landscapes exposed during ancient periods of lower sea level, offering clues about how early humans adapted to extreme environments. These are not merely searches for lost cities, they are recoveries of lost human experiences. The value of this quest extends far beyond historical curiosity. Each sunken city is a data point in the planet's own climate diary. By studying the layers of sediment that buried a city, scientists can pinpoint exactly when sea levels rose, how quickly the coastline changed, and what environmental stresses the community faced. This information is gold for climate modelers today. It provides real-world, historical benchmarks for how ice sheets melt and oceans behave, allowing us to test and refine predictions for our own future on a warming planet. The silent stones of these cities are speaking directly to our most pressing modern challenge. Yet this very promise brings a new vulnerability. As the locations of these sites become known, they face threats from looting, where priceless artifacts are ripped from their context and sold on the black market, erasing their story forever. They also face damage from industrial activity, like trawling nets that scrape the seabed or pipeline routes laid over ancient foundations. Protecting these fragile, non-renewable archives requires unprecedented international cooperation, a shared understanding that this underwater heritage belongs to all humanity. It is a race between discovery and destruction. Ultimately, the drive to find these lost worlds is a profound reflection of who we are. It is fueled by an insatiable desire to reconnect with our own story, to understand the full tapestry of human resilience, ingenuity, and adaptation. Every city we locate is a mirror held up to our own civilizations, showing us both our creativity and our fragility. This journey into the deep is, in truth, a journey inward, and with every new city that emerges from the blue darkness, we recover not just a piece of the past, but a deeper understanding of our own place in the long, unbroken chain of human history. From the legendary ports of Egypt to the flooded villages of the Neolithic, these 20 submerged cities form a profound mosaic. They are not isolated ruins, but interconnected chapters in the long story of human ambition, adaptation, and fragility. Each one, from the bustling trade of Heracleion to the quiet streets of Pavlopetri, teaches us a timeless lesson that civilizations, no matter how grand or ingenious, are intimately tied to their environment and profoundly vulnerable to its changes. We see this in the slow creep of sea levels that claimed Olous, the sudden liquefaction of soil that swallowed Port Royal, and the deliberate flooding that preserved Cheng. The fate of these places underscores a dialogue that has defined our history, a continuous negotiation between the places we build and the planet that sustains them. Every discovery is a vital puzzle piece, helping us reconstruct far more than lost architecture. These underwater sites allow us to piece together the story of humanity's evolving relationship with the Earth itself. They show us moments of incredible resilience, like the boat builders of Bouldnor Cliff adapting to a drowning forest, and moments of sobering humility, as seen in the folk tales of Rungholt that transformed geological disaster into moral legend. This record is invaluable, for it provides a deep-time perspective on challenges we face today. The data locked in submerged sediment tells us how quickly coasts can change, how communities respond to environmental stress, and what happens when the balance tips. As we reflect on these silent time capsules, it invites a powerful question for our own era. What will the cities we live in today leave behind for future explorers? What stories will our foundations tell about how we understood our place in a changing world? The legacy of these 20 cities is a gift of perspective, reminding us that we are part of a continuum, building upon the same dynamic Earth as those who came before. If this journey into the deep has captivated your imagination, consider subscribing for more explorations into the mysteries history has left behind. We would love to hear your thoughts, so share in the comments which sunken city from our journey resonates with you the most. The ocean floor remains the greatest museum on Earth, its halls holding countless stories yet untold, each one waiting for the next wave of discovery to bring its lessons back to the surface.